Go.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're doing another L&D special with Rohin. Rohin heads capability development for KPMG India. And today I'm so glad that you're here. Rohin, do you want to talk about your experience and do you want to tell us what you do?
So, Sturi, thank you for having me over. I love talking about learning. So, any opportunity I get for anyone asking me questions about learning is definitely a scary opportunity for the other person because I really go on about learning. So, Sturi, best of luck.
Yeah, I'll try and stop
Um,
you if I
now,
have to.
now, interesting stuff. So, I'm a career learning guy. I haven't done anything else. So, it's always I think a back of mind anxiety is as the entire learning thing goes up in flames in the next couple of years,
Yeah.
then what's the backup backup career option? I've been thinking about a backup beard model, like I have a lovely beard, so uh, maybe someone can pay me to model that.
Who is
But
that
till that
Bahubali
doesn't work out,
character? Kantappa. Katappa.
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 Yes, and again, all respect to Katappa, because till the time Katappa hadn't happened, I don't think there was a respectable anchor to the bald bearded look in popular cinema. Katappa made it easier for all of us.
Yes.
Again, thank you.
Yes. I don't think Katappa was the most desirable character of the movie, but if that's what you're aiming for, then it's fine.
I think my challenge with the Katappa character was I hadn't seen the movie, and everyone,
Like
not
you.
everyone, but a lot of people walk up to me and say, Katappa ne Bahubali ko kyun mara, and I had no idea what they were talking about.
Okay. Okay.
So,
All right.
so that was slightly challenging.
Okay. So now we're talking about L&D. Let's get back to L&D. And I had a question I had to ask and I completely forgot. Yes. So you were talking about how you're passionate about L&D, and I was curious to know how you got into it. I was curious to know when did you first figure out that this is your passion?
I'm embarrassed to admit, but this really wasn't my first career choice. I wanted to do advertising and copywriting, except it just didn't work out. And I fell into training accidentally and just really liked it. And I liked it enough to stick around. And yeah, that's it. It happened accidentally and it worked out well, I think.
I mean, of course it did. So, one question that I want to start with is understanding what are the qualities you look for when you're hiring for your L&D team. So let's start with that. So maybe, talk about the qualities that you look for at the hiring stage. And then after you've hired the person, what kind of skills they need in order to be able to sustain themselves in that space.
Hmm. Okay. See, the skills which you need obviously differ as per the role you're hiring. So the
Sure.
technical skills are concerned. But I have a list which I run all prospective hires through
Okay.
to really make sure that we're transparent with what they are getting into and what we are getting into.
Yeah.
So number one is you need I think the ambition to be the top of your game.
Okay.
So because if you have the desire to really be the best in what you're doing, whatever level you're joining at, I think a lot of the other things fall into place. So that's number one. Number two is the discipline of doing what is required, irrespective of how you feel about
Feel
this.
about. Yeah.
Okay, and let me just flesh it out a little bit because a lot of people get confused about this. See, everyone talks about how learning a new skill is amazing, and a lot of things. A lot of times when I do interviews, right, people are like, I want to join your team because there's so much learning, or I'm switching organizations because there's so much learning. And in social media, there's an entire reams of fans about who are writing about the glory of being in a learning curve and learning. I don't agree. I think learning at a lot of times is inherently challenging. It's uncomfortable.
I agree.
You don't know something, you're trying to learn it. in a lot of times there is a time pressure on it. There is someone who's providing you feedback, especially in the initial part of the learning curve when you're still picking up that skill. Learning, you're not getting a lot of positive strokes. You need to go through the grind of learning that skill till the time you get to some level of proficiency when you start seeing success. So there is a certain level of inherent discomfort to learn, right? So when you think about that, one and as a practicing coach also, when I looked at people who have shown a high probability of doing well, or when at least the literature I have read on success, one thing started becoming increasingly clear to me, which was that if you want to increase the probability of your success, you need to, once you get a view on what needs to be done, you need the discipline of doing that irrespective of how you feel about doing it. And the simplest example of that would be working out. Let's look at a non-learning example. Exercise is not complicated.
Yeah.
You get up in the morning mostly, you put on your sneakers. If you're a morning workout person, put on your sneakers, do your workout. It's not complicated, but it gets sabotaged by I'm not, up to it today. I'm not feeling up to it. I'm tired. I'm sleepy. The bed's comfortable. There are always going to be reasons. All right, but the person who has the discipline to stick with an agreement they make with themselves and extend that logic to agreements they make with stakeholders, just the act of self-discipline does wonderful things for you. People talk about picking up new skills. New skills are not tough. Put 20 minutes into a new skill every day for a couple of weeks, and you would have incredible levels of proficiency increase. People are not able to do that, and there are very good reasons for that. But those reasons will always exist. And this I'm saying as someone who has struggled with, for example, weight gain over a long period of time. I understand, I empathize with the trials and tribulations, but the discipline, as I said, of doing the right thing is just wonderfully important. Number three is, I think I referred to it, Abhay, but your ability to reskill yourself. It's the learning field is changing, and God is changing at a rate which I've never seen earlier, and I've only done learning for more than 2 decades. I thought I was pretty well trained in code learning, and you can look at my LinkedIn profile. Over the last couple of years, my focus has been on change management and communication strategy, because these are two things which you weren't really taught, and I rose through the ranks in learning. So change management and communication strategy have emerged as very strong levers over the last few years. I constantly recommend understanding behavioral economics to people because the nature of the learning organization is changing. Um, there is a role which I opened up a year and a half back, which I was hiring for, and we struggled for a long time to find someone to fit that role. That role has got redundant in the last year and a half. A role which was futuristic does not exist. So it was futuristic a year and a half back, and I would go to these breakfast roundtables and I would talk about, hey, you know what, I want to hire for this role. And people would be like, hey, that is so smart. Man, that role's disappeared. Okay.
What role was this?
There are platforms to do this role.
Sorry, what role was this?
So we were looking at someone who would be very focused on creating online content.
Okay.
All right. So writing scripts, getting videos shot, experimenting with videos as a work of a mode of learning. And now there are platforms which write the content. If we just look at Chat GPT as a simple example, right? Everyone knows about that. Your content can be written for you. All right. There is a platform which will convert that content to videos also. And writing content and creating videos was supposed to be this cerebral, extremely human skill a year and a half, 2 years back. I remember people talking about, AI will never be able to create the intuitive beauty and abstract or great poetry and great art and great language. And you can argue a lot of that stuff, but the fact is that AI is catching up. So point is that you need to be comfortable with reskilling yourself. And the last piece, which I typically tell people, is that you need to be very comfortable with problem solving, because very rarely do things work out the way you expect them to. So you need to be able to solve problems on the go. Now, this becomes even more challenging if you are trying to push the boundary. So if you're trying to do stuff, okay. So as a leader, one of the things which drives me is that I don't look at myself and my team in terms of, hey, we only know how to do this, so we can only do this. I look at myself and the team from the perspective of what needs to get done, and then we work our way backwards to figure out what will it take for us to do it. Now, if you're going to be doing that, and I do believe that that's what you should be doing, because that allows you to go after goals which matter instead of getting boxed in by the limitations of resourcing or skills. So if you're going to go after doing things which you have never done earlier because they need to be done, then you need to be very good at problem solving. So these are the things I look for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two things, because you mentioned, so now I would like to talk about it. Um, some people have proclivity towards learning, right? It just comes very naturally to them, right? And for some people, it doesn't come as naturally. So you spoke about discipline, but in order to be successful in the L&D space, would you say that it's a requirement that you're driven towards learning in general, not towards just what you're doing, right? So if it's something that doesn't come naturally to someone, how would you ideally direct them? How could they start if they don't have that kind of natural inclination towards it?
So I'm going to break it down to say that, there are roles. I mean, okay, let me take a step back. I don't want people to be boxed in by thinking that this is about what is classic L&D, right? Like research and design. No, I don't think it matters whether it's classic L&D or you are in a learning operations role. I think I think for anyone now, any professional, it is not an option but to become very comfortable with learning. Now, you are right. For some people, there might be a leaning towards learning agility. You are more comfortable to be in a learning. Sure. Now, that applies to not just learning, but to many, many things in life. There are things which we are comfortable doing, and your partner, your friend, someone else, everything else being the same, might not be as comfortable with that. Like my wife has no challenges with a dietary intake control. I believe that one bad dieting decision should be, matched by three others. So, I go on a wild binge. So I might have a certain leaning towards really going after food, and she doesn't have that challenge. All right. But if both of us want to achieve the same outcome of whatever healthy eating habits, I need to accept and understand my pattern around that outcome, which is, if I understand. Look, let me give you a learning example, because I think everything gets food related then, and then I get hungry. Um, okay, let's look at it like this. I don't like reading any. Everyone assumes that I love reading, so every birthday and every work anniversary, people are giving me more books to read. I don't. I have rediscovered, yes, my love for reading, but it's essentially a lot of angry, melancholic poetry, not L&D stuff. So I know that if I do the standard, like, I want to put 20, 30 minutes aside to read a book for myself, it doesn't work. There are certain types of books which I like. For me, the entire because I know that that doesn't work for me, what I have instead done is that when I work out every day, I put on a podcast. So I have figured that I need to be constantly learning, but if I try reading, then that just makes it even more challenging for me. I have to read anyway as a part of my job. I'm reading proposals, or you're going through content reviews. I read enough, not to mention all the mails. So I don't like reading books about learning these days. I like the podcasts. I like stuff which I can put on for those 30, 40 minutes while I'm working out. And that's worked wonderfully well for me. So to summarize, if you believe that, for example, you don't have a natural leaning towards learning, then design an ecosystem which makes it easier. Understand what works, what does not work, and then create an ecosystem which enables that. I knew someone who was very challenged with watching anything or or watching TED talks and stuff. But what he would do is, um, I was his coach and I convinced him to. I was I didn't really convince him, but over a period of time, he figured that okay, you know what, Rohan, I want to try this 30 minutes walk every day where I will listen to some specific podcast, and he started doing that, and that worked out wonderfully for him. So figure out what works and what does not work, but remember, solve for that problem. A lot of people take, like for example, I met people who are like, I can't read and hence I can't upskill myself. No, you can upskill yourself. This medium doesn't work for you. That distinction is very important, and that's where the ambition to be on top of your game, problem solving, all of these things become very important.
And we already know that everybody learns differently, right? Some people learn through experience, some people learn through reading, some people learn through listening, right? So it's different for different people. But I've
Yeah,
digressed.
sorry. My only qualifier there is that I do want to put this out there that different people learn differently, yes, but I want everyone to. I would like to put this out there that there are certain things which require depth. All right, and when you have to go for depth, you have to go through a very structured learning program at times, so that you understand the you know the the research and the models, and then yes, you're able to apply it. So you might find certain aspects more comfortable. For example, I find hands-on application more comfortable as a learning mode, but I massively appreciate the depth uh, going through a formal structured learning program brings, because you understand the theory, you understand the model, and then if you're comfortable with hands-on practice, it becomes easier for you to apply it. But I think all of these different elements have their own value.